Time to go in the trenches on This Week in Football presented by Geico. You know, football, it's always fun. But the snow makes it more fun. Or at least I think so, but I didn't play. So let's get that perspective from Howard Cross and Ross Tucker here in the trenches. I mean, is that a misnomer, Howard? Isn't it more fun playing football in the snow?
Absolutely not. I don't know where that came from. I think you guys think because it's snowing, it looks great. Your hands are freezing because every time you put your hand on the ground, it gets colder and colder. There's no way to get it warm. You can never thaw out, basically, during the game. You see these guys with no sleeves on, they regret it the entire game when they're riding around, sliding through the snow. They get up, they get frostbite everywhere. I'm telling you, it's brutal.
It's amazing because this past weekend, I mean, just watching those 1 o'clock games, 5 games going on in the snow is just so incredible, so fun to watch. But what are the biggest factors, Ross, when you talk about how the snow affects a game?
I think it actually helps the offenses because the offensive guys, whether it's the receivers or the running back in the open field, Shady McCoy, or the offensive linemen, they know where they're going. They know what their footwork is. You have to kind of throttle down, choke it down a little bit. You know, you can't get as athletic or be as agile because you don't want to slip. But when you throttle down and you know where your feet are going to be, you can get into the position you need. Whereas defenders, they're reacting off of you, so they're much more likely to slip. They're much less likely to be able to stand their ground. And by the way, I totally disagree with Howard. I'm from the Northeast. You grow up playing snow football with your buddies in the backyard.
That's right.
It's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, what is wrong? If smashing somebody in the ground and then smashing their face into the snow is wrong, I don't want to be right.
Ross actually didn't do a lot more than just bump into each other. When you're playing, you have skilled guys. You have to handle the ball. It is very tough to play in the snow.
I will say this, though. I never had a problem. I never had to wear sleeves. Never had a problem when I was starting. When I was a backup, that's a problem.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden,
when you're actually out there and you're running around and you're and you've got the pressure of the game, you don't really notice it. When you're the backup standing on the sideline the whole game, you notice it.
He is so wrong. I remember one time in pregame, they talked me into going out with no sleeves on. They're like, "Come on, Cross, show the guns, baby." I went out, I warmed up. I came in, I put clothes on so quick. I put on more stuff than I was going to the training room. Can I get more stuff? It's ridiculous.
I mean, this was a wild weekend. You had 90 touchdowns, the most touchdowns on any day in the history of the NFL. Howard, do you think it's good for the game when you get snow? Do you think it's just good for the sport?
I think it looks good on TV. I think it looks good for the fans. I think they enjoy it. But I think that it's going to be very interesting to see when a guy like a Peyton Manning, who already has to wear a glove when it's cold, how he's going to play. When you see what happened to Dallas the other night in Chicago, it was freezing cold in the snow. Everything affects you when you're cold, and it's just not an even playing field. It's cold for both teams, but it's tough to handle.
It looks fantastic on television.
It really does.
I mean, even like my mom, she wouldn't normally watch a game, but she watched the Eagles game because she thought it was fun to watch the guys playing in the snow.
Right.
And that's why the NFL schedules some of the games the way that they do. Think about the iconic Atlanta at Green Bay, the Michael Vick game in the snow at Lambeau, or the Tuck Rule game. You still remember those games, those snow games, year later because, as Howard said, it does look fantastic on TV.
Ice Bowl as well. I mean, and Ross, here's the other thing. I feel like when you're talking about football, you're talking about a sport where it's supposed to be no excuses. It can be played in any weather. The conditions aren't supposed to be perfect. So mentally, you're just supposed to be able to handle anything, right?
And that's what makes football great. You know, that's one of the things that separates football from the other sports. It's not indoors like basketball or hockey. You know, they obviously wouldn't play baseball in those conditions. That's what we like about our football players. We want them to be big, strong, tough. We want them to play in the elements. They kind of embody what we like as Americans.
Yeah, you want them to be adaptable. Now, we're all getting ready, obviously, for a Super Bowl in this potential weather. I mean, who knows? It could be 40 degrees and sunny. We don't know, but maybe it will snow.
I love that 40 was like the high for
Yeah,
you.
exactly. Well, right. This probably won't be above 40 in February. That we can guarantee. Howard, do you think a Super Bowl in the snow, what would you think of that?
I think it's going to be great for the game itself, the fans in the stadium. I don't think it's going to be tough for things like tailgating, how they're going to facilitate getting people in and out. The snow can cause a lot of havoc on the outside. But as for the game itself, it'll be a great game. Both teams will be equally matched because the snow will, it'll hurt both teams and it'll help both teams.
So you wouldn't have a problem with, oh, man, our championship game is decided in unnatural conditions.
Those are natural conditions. Unnatural conditions when you play it indoors.
All right, fair enough.
That I totally agree with. And I think this weekend was proof positive that you can score a lot of points. I mean, even despite all the snow, more points scored than ever before. Even Monday night between the Cowboys and the Bears, when it was bitterly cold, -8 degrees wind chill, there was still a ton of points scored. Obviously, you see the Vikings and the Ravens as well. That's not an issue. The only issue the cold or the snow Super Bowl is for anybody is maybe the fans that actually go to the game.
Yeah.
Are we really that concerned about the 65,000 people that go to MetLife? They're still going to sell out. Those people are still going to go. And I mean, who goes to the Super Bowl anyway? Really, really rich people, right? I mean,
they can afford a coat.
Yeah.
Even a hat and gloves.
I don't feel bad for them.
And you know that if it snows during the Super Bowl, it's going to be the highest rated Super Bowl we've ever had, without question. Now, Peyton Manning, the other, issue could be Peyton Manning in the cold in a Super Bowl, because right now the Broncos, especially with no Rob Gronkowski anymore, looks like the path is paved pretty nicely for Denver to go to the Super Bowl, right? Peyton in the cold, that's always an issue. But this past weekend, we take a look at the numbers. Peyton, much different this past weekend against the Titans in below freezing temperatures than he has been in his career. Entering that game was 3-7, more interceptions than touchdowns. This past weekend, and this includes the playoffs, he completed 66% of his passes, threw for nearly 400 yards, 4 touchdowns to no interceptions, was on the money, and even had some words for critics of him in the cold afterwards, saying they could take that narrative and put it in a certain place that we can't get into on TV. But, Howard, do you think that Peyton having a game like that helps dispel some of those storylines about him in the cold and his struggles?
I don't mean any harm, but it was cold, but it wasn't like bad weather. It was just cold. When it's windy, when it's cold, if it's damp, if it's snowing, if anything else is happening, that glove is going to be an issue. And I don't care what he says, how he says it, how he tries to explain it. It's really going to be an issue.
I just thought it was surprising how much the Broncos organization, the emphasis they put on dispelling what they believe is a myth. I mean, the play call, and they're up by 20 in the fourth quarter, and they're still throwing the ball. The PR staff is ready right away after the game's over with all these Peyton Manning cold weather stats. I mean, Peyton says what he said, you can stick it where the sun don't shine. I mean, I can't remember ever a team caring that much. Why do you care that much? Maybe it's because they're going to have some cold playoff games in Denver. Maybe it's because the Super Bowl's at MetLife, but it's like they're already trying to get that out of the way now before they encounter it in January.
I'll tell you what, I would sign up to seeing Peyton Manning with that glove on throwing in the snow in MetLife in February.